1 minute exposure. Now the only problem with that is the water looks really nice, but these bushes up here are moving around in the wind.
Good afternoon everyone. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to show you an image that I shot this afternoon, but I'm also going to show you how I processed that image. It used a technique of blending two exposures, one a long exposure and one a normal exposure, and the reason for doing that is to avoid some unwanted effects that you can sometimes get in long exposure images. So we'll start off by heading out, where I can show you how I found and shot the image, and then we'll come back and very quickly talk you through the processing. So let's go and take a picture.
Okay, so I'm down on the trails which are actually beside the river. The dam is up that way and the river runs through here. It's not a big river, but it might make for some interesting shots if I can get near to it. I can hear it and it sounds as if it's coming from the general direction behind me. And there is a trail that leads down through some woodland here, so I'm going to go and have a look and see if there's a way to get through there and see if there's any shots to be had in there. Don't know, we'll have to wait and see. Okay, so that's pretty frustrating actually. I can get down really close to the river, but not right to it, not to a point where I could actually get a shot, because there's just fallen trees in there that have blocked all of the trails. There's just no way that I can actually get in there. Even if I went on hands and knees, I can't get beneath the branches of the fallen trees, and even if I can get through there, I don't know what's waiting for me the other side. So that scene isn't going to work. That's unfortunate, but there we go. We'll carry on exploring. Okay, so I've done quite a lot of exploring along some, well, I won't even call them trails, I'm not really sure what they are. I didn't bother filming it. It would have been boring for you, and to be honest, I needed to concentrate on keeping my footing rather than keep setting up video shots. But I have found a way down to the river. Now I'm outside of the woodland, which is not really what I wanted, but it's still quite a nice scene. I've got this little narrow channel running through here, and the water is rushing in over the rocks here, making a little waterfall, and then there's some plants up behind. The shot I want to do is a long exposure looking up here to the waterfall, so the gully and the water in it running in from the bottom right hand side of the frame, and then the waterfall up probably towards the left hand third. Probably this image is going to be cropped a bit in post, possibly to a 8x10 format. I'm not sure yet until I actually get it back in post. Because I want to do a long exposure, I fitted a circular polarizer to cut the glare out, and I'm going to put in a 10 stop ND filter, so that's a big stopper, which will let me get the long exposure that I want. 16 to 35 lens, 16 millimeters, and f16, and the 10 stop filter in there should give me a 1 minute exposure. So I'm going to do that now. Right, okay, so that shot's done. Now the only problem with that is the water looks really nice. Nice and smooth and silky. But these bushes up here are moving around in the wind, and while that's kind of okay, I prefer if they were still. So I'm going to do a second shot without the 10 stop filter at about probably I would think about 25th of a second, and that shot would then give me nice still bushes, nothing waving around and blurring, and then what I can do is merge the two of them together using layer mask in Photoshop. So let's do that now. Okay, I think that's going to look nice.
Okay, so that's how I got the image. So now let's jump into Lightroom and have a look and see how I did the processing. Okay, so here are my two images in Lightroom. They've had nothing whatsoever done with them. So this is the long exposure and this is the normal exposure. So if I go into the develop module, you can see they've just been imported. They're the basic raw files straight out of the camera. In terms of processing, this image, which is the long exposure, obviously has the nice silky smooth water, but it also has a lot of blurring in the branches and the bushes up here. Now, I could probably get away with that, but that's not really the effect I wanted. I wanted this to be all nice and sharp and not moving, not blurry. This image, which obviously has all the texture in the water, does have nice sharp detail here, because at 1/25 of a second it pretty much froze the motion. There's a couple of little bits that are blurry, but in general it's nice and clear. This image has a blue colour cast as a result of the 10-stop filter, and this one doesn't. And this image actually is slightly more exposed. It's a slightly brighter exposure than this one, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is start with this image, which is the long exposure image, and I'll start off just by doing some lens corrections. That just gets rid of that distortion and vignetting. And then I'm going to correct the colour because it's got this blue tinge. And I don't normally do it this way, but for this one I think it's a good idea. What I'm going to do is take the eyedropper tool here and click on something that looks like it's pretty much pure white. So this water here will probably do. And that's immediately warmed the image up. Probably could do with being a fraction warmer. So I'm just going to turn it up a little tiny bit more. Kind of like that. And then I'm going to tweak the exposure up just a little bit as well, just to make it a bit brighter. I'm going to bring the highlights back, just putting a bit more texture back in the water here, and just lift the shadows a bit. I'm going to do my white point, hold down the Alt key so I can see what I'm doing, and drag the white point slider across just until something clips, and I can see it's starting to clip there, so I'll put it back a bit further. That's it. And then the same with the black point. Now, on this one the black point is clipping up in the sky, so I don't care about that because I'm not using the sky. So I'm waiting until my foreground is clear. Okay. Yeah, that's looking quite good. I'm going to add some vibrance, not too much, and a little bit of saturation. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to selectively add some clarity. I never use clarity as a global adjustment, so I'm going to use the brush tool, dial in a bit of clarity, and then I'm going to brush some clarity into the water here, and that just helps to make the textures that are still there pop a little bit. And I'm also going to put some into the rocks here and here. Like that. I could probably boost that a little bit more. That's nice. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with the overall foreground. So I'm going to do basic sharpening on this, go into detail, sharpening's at 40, which is kind of my default position, and I'm just going to dial it across, just mask it a little bit like that. Okay, that's the first image. Now the second one. So lens corrections. It's taken out all of that problem there. Now the sky on this one looks a bit washed out, so I'm going to bring the highlights down a bit, bring the shadows up a bit. I'll do the white point again, but this time I'm not worried about the white points appearing in the foreground. I'm only interested with problems in the sky, so about there. And then the blacks. But again, I need to watch that I don't have any blacks clipping in the top part of the image, so about there looks good. Again, some vibrance and some saturation. And all I'm really looking at is what the top part of the image, the green and the sky, looks like. Now the problem with the sky, where the polarizer has had an uneven effect, where it's a bit brighter this side than it is kind of in the middle. So I'm just going to pop in a graduated filter like that. All I'm going to do is just pull the exposure back a bit, and that balances it a bit more. And then I'm going to put a second one in just over this side. I'm going to crop this image. I'm not too worried about the far left hand side of the frame. Just put it back like that. And then I'm going to use the HSL sliders, and I'm going to bring up a bit of saturation on the greens and boost the aquas and the yellows a little bit there. And then I think I might bring the luminance up a fraction on the blue, like that. Okay. I'm going to sharpen again. I'm only looking at the top of the image now, so leave the sharpening as it is, hit the masking, put it across. I don't need any masking in that blue. I can see I've got a couple of dust spots there. There might be water spots. I'll deal with those later. Okay. Could probably do with a bit more saturation and vibrance on this overall, just for the sky and the foliage. Okay, that's now processed. I'm going to select both images, and then I'm going to go Photo, Edit in, Open as Layers in Photoshop. I'm going to wait a few seconds until that's opened up. Okay, so here's my two layers, and at the moment my long exposure layer is on the top. Doesn't really matter, but for convenience I'm going to move that to the bottom, so my normal exposure layer is now on the top. I'm going to apply a layer mask, and I want a black layer mask because I want to hide this entire top layer. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, that'd be Option on a PC, and now that top layer is hidden. I'm going to take a brush, make sure that it's white, opacity at 100%, flow at 100, and all I'm going to do is brush in the entire top of the image, like this. So everything that isn't the moving water and the foreground rocks is now taken from that normal exposure image. Now what I could do is just add a bit more sort of saturation into here, and I can do that easily, or I can try it easily. If I bring the opacity on my brush right down to about 15%, and then just a little bit of that normal exposure layer come through on the rocks here, maybe just a little bit here as well, just brightens it up a little bit. Okay. And now I've got my nice long exposure on the water, and I've got a fast exposure on all this plants and branches, all the stuff that was blurring that I didn't want to, and that was possible because I composed the shot to make sure that the plants and the water were not in the same part of the frame. All that's left to do on this now, I'm going to flatten the image, and then I'm going to crop it. 10 by 8. How does that look? 10 by 8. 10 by 8 looks pretty good. And that's probably about it. What I would now normally do is leave the image for a little while and see if it needs anything else. Might need a little bit more clarity adding, maybe I'll decide to boost the contrast, or maybe I'll decide to add a post-crop vignette. But otherwise, that's the image finished. Okay, I've got my final image in Lightroom and I've had a quick look at it, and I think all I'm going to do on this, I might just pull the highlights down a fraction, and then I think I'm going to put in a post-crop vignette to about there, maybe a little bit more, like that. And that's it, that's my final image. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the end-to-end process. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, don't forget to hit the subscribe button when it comes up. It'll be on the screen here in a moment. Or there's also a subscribe button down underneath the video as well. Likes, shares and comments are very, very much appreciated and really helpful in terms of promoting the channel. And I'll just say now, thank you very much for watching, and until the next video, bye.